Hello everyone, I'm Wendell Jones and welcome to this edition of the program Jones and Company. On this program we examine national, sometimes international issues, especially on a Sunday. And on our program today we are going to be talking about the global village as it relates to embracing the knowledge-based technology. And our guest on the program today is Mr. C. Alan Johnson, who is a technology consultant, and he has been on our radio program on our sister medium, Love 97, and we want to talk today about the digital arena, digital gambling. We want to talk about the Lotteries and Gaming Act, and we understand that there is a move afoot to overhaul the Lotteries and Gaming Act in the country. And so it is our pleasure to have Mr. Johnson on our program today. Welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mr. Jones and Mr. Enes, for having me.
Nice to have you, Godfrey Enes.
Thank you.
You right up to speed with technology these days, right?
Well, I hope I can keep up with Mr. Johnson.
Oh, that is a difficult thing to do.
I know.
C. Alan Johnson, many people heard you on radio. Few have probably seen you on television. You've been on one of our town meetings, I think.
Yeah, one of the town meetings and one of the shows involving BTC.
Very good, very good. And so it's our delight to have you here. Tell us about your background now as a technology consultant.
I have been involved in technology from 1979. I became exposed to technology upon moving to the United States in 1979 to attend high school. Upon entering Miami Jackson Senior High, the teachers there noticed that my brother and I had an exemplary scheme of talent for mathematical calculations. And so they used to say, well, you guys seem to calculate like computers. And so they introduced us to this type of computing that existed at the time using punch cards. Mm-hmm. And we became pretty enamored, fell in love with the processes. And throughout high school, we examined, studied, asked questions, being a very inquisitive type person. Eventually, graduating from high school, we moved to Florida Memorial College, which is now Florida Memorial University. And at that time, we moved in, and I actually went to study a biological field, physiological psychology. And still having a love for technology, though, I immediately inquired as to where is the computer labs, where do you keep this information, processed information. Went into the computer lab. At the time, we didn't even have CRTs, or monitors as you call it. You usually just type into a keyboard and paper comes out the other end in chat rooms, etc. At the time, that's when I realized there's this process called the internet. And a lot of people today would actually consider the World Wide Web the internet, but the World Wide Web is just a little over 20 years old. The internet is maybe over 60 or 70 years old. And the internet is this interconnectivity of all colleges together, shared information and databases between agencies. The World Wide Web now basically gives you access to that. At the time when I was, that first year, when we wanted to say access Microsoft, there was no such thing as www.microsoft.com. You had to type like 169.172.15.101.
How long ago was this?
In the early 80s.
In the early 80s?
Yes.
So the internet came on stream in...
I think it was like in the 40s and 50s, yes.
In the 40s and 50s?
Yes.
The internet?
Yes.
Is that right?
What you calling the World Wide Web?
The military used the internet.
Yes, first the military used it for shared information. It's used the AppNet. It's various different names, and it came together. Then colleges began to share information around colleges. Mm-hmm. Then it evolved into what we call bulletin boards and posting, almost like public bulletin board, BBS system, dial-up, etc., reading books in libraries, sending messages across. Then it evolved into monitors when you begin to use CRT, which brings me to the early 80s. At that particular time, during the 80s, from the late 70s, IBM had a group of people called Project Chess, and they were working on what is called what we now call a desktop PC in a commercial standpoint. There was companies out there like Tandy's and other companies, but none like IBM. After being involved in the lab and some individuals took notice of the skills we had, maybe through some happenstance that we were doing in the college, going and looking at other computers and they thought that the skills would be valuable through that development process. And so as such, we were offered the opportunity for employment at IBM at the time when they were developing what we now call a computer.
So you were employed with IBM where, in Florida?
In Florida, in Boca Raton, Florida.
In Boca Raton?
Yes.
And you remained with IBM for how long?
But 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
Yes. And we developed the PC, the variations of the computers. We developed something called a PC Junior. We developed a precursor to what you now call the laptop computer. We did testing for the early version of Windows from 3.1. Eventually, with Bill Gates being married to IBM, when we decided at the time, development decided to disengage Microsoft, and we developed a software called OS2, which today is still superior to Windows. The thing about the mistake that I think IBM made at that particular time was not retaining the rights to the operating system. They basically told Bill Gates, take it. And he basically was a genius in marketing.
Okay. Tell us, Mr. We're talking about emerging technology. Where is the Bahamas in all of this, Mr. Johnson?
The Bahamas since the early 90s. In fact, the Bahamas, from going all the way back basically to the internet, has always been a digital player in the global marketplace through a network called the Arcos network. And the problem is that technology was not considered an integrated part of development. It was basically for militaries and high corporations. And this network is what was built on. In fact, people like ZNES and others may have used it, and even Betelco, as it's called at that time, was utilizing the Arcos network for communications. What we eventually evolved to during the 90s is what we now would consider Cable Bahamas, where they came in and they kind of help evolve the evolution of communications, actually telecommunications. And it's very important for us to recognize that there's something called telecommunications, and it's another one called telecom. And oftentimes when you hear the conversations on the radio, they're speaking of telecom.
So we are using fiber optic cable now.
Yes.
For most of what we do.
Yes, and telecom is basically the appliances that is based on a telecommunications system.
Okay.
And as it evolved, we went fiber. Cable Bahamas began the process of building out a fiber network as that transition began to happen, an all-fiber network. The Arcos network at one time it became doing Enron. Everybody should remember Enron at one time that used to control the Arcos network. They came up for bankruptcy. It was for sale. I think one of the great errors of our time is when BTC was not allowed to buy the Arcos network. And they're still the administrators of it, but I see Cable Bahamas manages it. But it was a good investment for a couple $1 million that's now worth as much as $1 billion or more.
Godfrey?
Mr. Johnson, we are a country, we are a people. All we do is adapt or adopt technology.
Actually, in the Bahamas, we have a reactionary response.
Yes, yeah.
We are considering, when you begin to look at what's called digital fiber density, and that's how you rate a country's readiness for the global marketplace. If you compare the Bahamas with the 200 countries around the world, we'll be rated #1. If you actually treat Freeport, not Grand Bahama, but just treat Freeport as a standalone country, Freeport will be rated #2 in digital preparedness. And so when you begin to look at the fact that, you know, we are more digitally prepared from a telecommunications standpoint than all the other countries in the world, it's just amazing that we just don't recognize the potential. Even in telecom, when you move to what's called, what we call for the phone services and these appliances, we're still within the top 3 in the...
But Mr. Johnson, you go down to road traffic. People still using paper.
Yes, throughout the government agencies.
You go to the post office to get a receipt. People say, why, to me, that's a sign of backwardness. Technology been technologically backward.
Not actually. If you actually use us as a what you call a development growth not to be disparaging, but we will be considered disabled, suffering from some sort of mental inability to develop with the rest of the world.
So technologically, we are somewhat handicapped.
Absolutely. When you see, here we are, we're even looking at the concept of getting computerized receipts, when nowadays they're giving electronics receipt. I have instances where I've traveled around the world, especially in the US, where you get your receipt, not physically, they actually beam it to you. Yes, they give you a digital receipt with a digital signature. And so here it is that we're talking about going to where we can at least get a computerized receipt and the rest of the world is moving to a digital receipt.
But we as a people, I hear it all the time, we think we're so advanced.
Well, what we do is we have something.
This, as Jones and I call it, this vortex of ignorance is so profound in this country.
I call it the arrogance of ignorance leading to paralysis through analysis.
Yeah.
But
arrogance
of ignorance leading to paralysis through analysis.
Leading to paralysis
through analysis.
Okay.
And so what happens is that we have something, when I hear the conversations, I think we have a tremendous amount of intellectual dishonesty in our engagement in the country. And the reason I say that is that if I want to prove a point, I'll use America. If I want to, and so if I want to prove another point, instead of saying, okay, good, since you use America as that first point, let's use it for the next one. No, I'm going to use China to prove my other point. And I'm going to use Taiwan as my other point. Then I'm going to use Singapore to prove my other point. It is never consistent. We'll find somewhere in the world that's actually doing what we want to be done, or to justify saying that they are less than we are. So we basically use levels of other people's failures as our gauge for success.
Why is there something wrong, or there's some deficiency in our educational system? Why we are in this state?
Absolutely. Let's use an example. We have we call it a Haitian problem in our schools, and there's a language barrier in that respect. Technically, it's a bigger problem than the Haitian problem. We have a language problem in our school, but it's not Creole, it is digital. In the same respect that we're trying to teach a Haitian child who speaks only Creole and English, for the rest of the students, we're trying to teach digital children in analog language. And it's no difference. And so what happens is when you begin to embrace technology, technology adapts to each child. If you, for instance, if you have a child comes from with a language like patois, that they have a way of using slangs, we can use technology to teach them English as a second language. We can teach Creole, we can teach Guyanese, we can teach whatever as a second language. But what the beauty about this technology in schools, here's just an example. You have a teacher with 20 students for 1 hour. In her best condition, she gives them exactly 5 minutes. Whereas if you actually embrace technology where the computer actually gauges each child, and in that class of 20, you may have a few at, let's say we're talking about 6th graders, 5 of them might be at 5th grade, 2 at 4th grade, 1 at 7th grade, and the rest at 6th. The computer notices what level they're at and teaches the 4th grader, trying to bring them up to 6 gradually. It teaches even the 7th grader and move them further along. And it moves each one. But the computer recognizes that. So the teacher becomes a referee by basically gauging wherever, moving around the class to assist the students, as opposed to giving them 5 minutes of education.
Yeah. And these children were actually born in the digital age.
Absolutely.
And so they are digital children.
Yes. And what we are doing is we're telling them, ignore which you were born and come back to where your grandparents was born, actually, not even your parents.
Are we developing a dichotomous society, as I call it, in that the children that go to the private schools, the early learning centers, right? That's what they call early learning centers, right? I got a grandson who was 4 or 5. And he'd been using the computer from he was 1 or 2.
Right. I recommend putting a computer in the hand of a child at the latest at 18 months. And there's a significant, because they are digitally aware. And Mr. Jones, you mentioned about being digital natives. You have the digital natives. You have individuals like myself and others who have embraced technology. Yeah. We call them digital immigrants. Right. And then we have the digital illegals. They're literally illegal in the country, in the digital world, because they've refused to get nationalized, right? Nationalized as digital immigrants. But all of those individuals, that was basically, you could use the cutoff as 1992 as the explicit cutoff, but going back to the 80s, they are all digital. They're digital children. Like an example, after July 10th, 1973, everyone who were born in the Bahamas to Bahamian parents, independents, are Bahamians. all of us who is pre-1973 is colonial. And then we became nationalized as Bahamians. And then even for those who coming into the country, they have to seek to become nationalized. It's the same thing. These kids are born digital. There's some of us who came in, it was pre-digital, so they give us our citizenship. And the rest of the country now has to seek to become citizens in this new digital world.
Let's take a break here. This is Jones and Company, and we are talking about the digital age. And we have a technology consultant here today, C. Alan Johnson, as our guest. We'll come right back.
Hello, Bahamas. My name is Craig Flowers. Today I'd like to talk to you about something that has always been very near and dear to me, and that is our environment. I came from a very humble two-bedroom wooden house, Crocker Street, with an outdoor toilet. Today, I'm CEO of FML Group of Companies. But over my lifetime journey, I would have brought with me a tremendous amount of respect for our environment. So let us all chip in. Remember, when we invest into the environment, everybody wins. Thank you.
We're back here on Jones and Company today. I'm speaking about digitalization with Mr. C. Alan Johnson. And Mr. Johnson, there are a good number of Bahamians who we are going to have to pull almost kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
Well, technically, I would tell you what happens. Right now, this is the first time in our country where I think 60% of the population is under the age of 45 or 50. And so most of those are the digital people or the CUPs. Then there's a tremendous amount of the Bahamians that's digitally aware. So in worst case scenario, we just need to embrace digitalization for the 60% and actually begin a process of education and transformation for the other 40%.
We heard about e-commerce some years ago.
Yes.
And embracing e-commerce to run the Bahamas and even to do business in the Bahamas. How far along are we, Mr. Johnson, in embracing e-commerce in this country?
Actually, we're trying to use technology and processes that's about 10 to 15 years old. Let's use an example. I think about a year or two ago, I heard them trying to bring consultants in from other countries that is less digitally prepared than ours to give us advice on digitizing the straw vendors. And they were creating an e-commerce platform, basically reinventing the wheel. Visa, MasterCard, American Express, Discover Card, PayPal, WorldPay, Bitcoin, all of those have already developed a platform. So basically, embracing a digital platform for the vendors is no more than actually making an application to utilize those platforms, and those individuals charge nothing. They charge 1.5% processing fee and a free account for you to begin using their platform.
You came to prominence in the minds of a whole lot of people when we had the debate on the referendum, the gaming referendum in the country. And you had a difficulty with how the government was going about it, and I think you voted no.
Yes, it did.
And as a technological man, a man who is a technology consultant, many people find it very, very strange that you, who spend most of your life these days in cyberspace, would vote no.
Well, the reason was the government was not speaking the language. It was a facade. What you had was the one-eyed midget speaking to a land of blind giants. And I say that because here it is, just use an example. The government said they was going to regulate and tax something that they have no jurisdiction on to regulate and tax. Those servers are not in the Bahamas. Under global trade rules, you do not have the ability to regulate or tax them. The government had no more authority to regulate or tax them than they did for Walmart or any other Sears or any of those in another jurisdiction. So in essence, what the government was basically offering the people was a watered down, incorrect, and I was somewhat suspect platform that was actually would have tied us into the conversation for embracing what is really called a digital gambling platform.
Yeah, but if the government said to you that people, in the opinion of the government, were gambling illegally, and they wanted to regulate the industry, why would you have taken exception or had a difficulty with the government seeking to put regulations in place to control something that it perceived or it thought was illegal?
Well, the government, that's the point. The government could declare rain illegal and declare that they're going to regulate and tax it. But the government don't have no authority to regulate or tax rain.
So as far as you're concerned now, internet gaming or gaming, gambling in a web shop or at home on your computer, as far as you're concerned, these things are not illegal.
No, they're not. They're no more illegal than in the Bahamas than watching porn on your computer, going to Walmart on your computer, going to Netflix on your computer. They're not illegal because the government of the Bahamas has no digital laws exercising jurisdiction over another territory. In fact, no country has any laws, nor can you exert a law in the Bahamas. Let's say, for instance, you put a gaming server in the Isle of Man. You cannot write a regulation in the Bahamas making it illegal for the Isle of Man to have a server in that country.
Or to access the
server, right.
in the Isle of Man.
Right, because what we have is we have trade laws. We have the same trade organization that we're signing every day prohibits you from actually excluding individuals from that. In fact, Antigua just won a multi-billion-dollar WTO award from the United States, from the giant United States, for denying its customers, its clients who's registered there, access to the Americans in the Americas. Mm-hmm. And the WTO gave them permission in February to begin actually bootlegging data and information from America.
So you voted against because you just thought that the whole thing was absurd?
Absurd, absolutely. It is actually, they were trying to throw us back and tether us. We could use an example. The conversation that's going on now with the digital gaming platform. Even that is a joke. In fact, in my mind, it is actually created to further restrict behemoths. It's to restrict behemoths from entering this global digital marketplace.
Okay.
Mr. Johnson, I've heard people call into his show and make the remark that gambling could be controlled. And I tell you, the thinking is that if the Chinese could use technology to block Google or to sanction Google, the view is that why can't you use that to stop online gambling in the Bahamas?
Well, the Chinese is a unique society. We are a democratic society with express freedoms within our constitution that give them freedom of expression, freedom to association, etc. There's no such thing in China. And so the companies that enter China has to basically recognize the brute of those laws that they have in place. Even if, for instance, let's say, for instance, if you was to get the technology from China to do that, I would simply go to them and set up a proxy server that changes every 60 seconds, that changes what is called the IP address. And so essentially, you would have to basically disconnect the internet. And so you have basically, do you want to control your country? We could basically, if that's the case, let's have a referendum to abolish democracy.
You said to me on radio, C. Allen Johnson, that as far as you are concerned, that the police or any authority should not be able to control this. You can.
I'm not saying they shouldn't be able to. I'm saying they can't.
They can't. Okay. This is your iPhone.
Yes, that's Samsung. Yeah.
Samsung iPhone, and you are able to use this to buy numbers through the web shop.
Yes.
In Miami, Chicago, New York, wherever.
Anywhere in the world, actually.
Anywhere in the world. And you say you dare a policeman to stop you from using this.
Yes. Right. And show me in law where that you have jurisdiction over what I'm accessing.
Okay. Similarly, this is your iPad.
Yes.
And you're saying that on this iPad, you as an agent for one of the web shops should be able to go downtown, Cable Beach, wherever, and use this to buy numbers for people who you meet.
Yes. If you came to me and you said to me you would like to order a tennis from Walmart, am I creating an illegal transaction by getting your money, which is 2x? See, the problem is first let me say, it's not illegal. That wouldn't be illegal. What we have done is we combine.
Yeah, but gambling is illegal in the Bahamas unless you have a license to gamble.
Yes.
Yes?
And then basically, when you begin to analyze the argument that's been made in the country, it is illegal in the state of an analog world. But what happens is when you begin to use technology to facilitate, and sure you use what is called, it uses the word, and I hear the argument using the word machinery, mechanisms, and that means computers.
Oh, apparatus.
It doesn't. Yes, a computer does nothing except follow instructions. An apparatus, it'll be almost like a skill saw. It has a particular purpose. And it's a slot machine, etc., that is designated in those. That's what they talk about machinery. When you're using a computer, you're using a virtual access, a gateway to a virtual technology. The problem in the arguments even being made by the numbers people into the courts, by the attorneys, is they themselves don't understand the argument to make in front of the courts. Here's why. When you have a transaction, a gambling transaction, two things happen immediately. First of all, it may happen in a fraction of a second, but it's not a single action. A transfer of money. Maybe the government can argue that you are now facilitating gambling. That can easily be solved by separating the two, where you give your money here, wait a minute, and then utilize the virtual monies to do whatever you want, because now you're in cyberspace. All I'm doing now is converting your hard currency into cyber currency. What happens though is when you go to the gambling window and you give them some money, when you say, here's my dollar, they punch the money, they punch the dollar into that account. Even if a fraction of a second occurred, that transaction has ended. Now you're saying, I don't know how to use a computer, can you order that tennis for me? Can you place that number for me? And so what happens is, but in our understanding of technology, we treat from walking to the car, going into the web shop, giving the transaction back to the car as one transaction.
The government is saying, and people from the religious community, they're saying, that it is fine for you to order something from Walmart or from anywhere else in the world over on your iPhone or your iPad. But when you are using these devices to gamble, that is illegal in the Bahamas.
No. What happens is, what you're doing, you're facilitating an e-commerce transaction. E-commerce is not illegal in the Bahamas, period. Other than that, then banking might as well be illegal. Because when I go to a bank and I walk into Royal Bank and I said I want them to transfer some money over to First Caribbean, that happens through a flash, and that's not illegal.
You don't go in one of the banks to gamble.
No, but
you are involved in a trade.
See, because what happens is you have to remove the word gambling and ask, is this a digital transaction?
Is it a trade?
Beg your pardon?
Is it a trade?
No, it is a digital transaction, but it has nothing. What happens is when you put the word gambling, you got to take the word gambling, attach clothing, attach automobile, attach whatever you want to it. It is a digital transaction. That's what we have to stop. You're accusing me of, you're converting a digital transaction to what you interpret as gambling. You cannot, if I'm sitting behind this and I'm doing something, unless you could connect the server to me, to the money, to everything, and treat it as one transaction, then you can't say they're the same. Let's say, for instance, the Commissioner of Police comes to me and says to me, I was gambling. You know, I ask him, present the apparatus for which I was gambling. You know what he will do? He will just say he was using this. I'll break it and says, bring me another one. But am I gambling now on this? But you said I was using that. Because that is just a portal. That is just a portal to a virtual world, a digital world that we seem to want to ignore in the Bahamas. The problem is that we are calling it gambling. Yes, you are utilizing lotteries, games of chance, games of skill. When we go to Facebook, there's individuals all over Facebook that pay money and play Farmville and these other games, that they pay for skill and you get points and you get money and you get whatever and transactions. That's gambling. If that's the case, then they should immediately make Facebook illegal in the Bahamas. Because there is a form of chance gambling risk, would be defined by gambling by our archaic Lottery and Gaming Act. Facebook games applications are gambling, and those same applications operate on your phone.
So you're saying that we have some artificial barriers to trade,
which cannot stand up in any trade agreement.
I go further. We really don't understand this world of cyberspace.
No, we don't. What we're trying to do is we're trying to make cyberspace the way we know it. We have to drop what we've been doing and embrace cyberspace. You can't bring the two together. They don't exist. A physical location does not exist in cyberspace. When I'm sitting here, I'm actually working in Miami and I'm working in the Cayman Islands right now. I'm not physically there. That's what cyberspace. There's a concept I spoke to on your show called the metaverse. The metaverse is where the two reality converges, where your actually work, pay, everything happens in space. Your existence, basically your subsistence exists here. The only thing you do is eat, use the bathroom, and shower. You don't carry any money. You don't do any of those different things. All of that exists in cyberspace. And that isn't coming. That is actually here. And what we have in the Bahamas is a total unawareness of how the digital universe works. And this is what scares me, because when we begin to look at the different modes of operation in the global marketplace, here we are thinking that individuals have to come to the Bahamas to take advantage of the resources here in the Bahamas, when some guy in the computer is going to be utilizing all of the power of this trade agreement. And Bahamians going to be saying, okay, we're going to do farming and we're going to catch some fish and go there, and then I'm going to become a lawyer and I'm going to fly to Cayman Islands and talk to some clients. When some guy is going to simply tell a client to simply go and find your computer terminal. In fact, they're going to tell him, is there a web shop anywhere in New Providence? Well, go to the web shop and Skype me and we'll begin to engage you.
Yeah, and then, you have people who want to close the web shop.
Well, but see, because we have married, and this is something that's very disingenuous. We have married the word web shops to gambling.
Yeah.
A web shop, an internet cafe, is exactly what it is. It's a place you go to exercise access to a portal for the internet. A web shop is not a gambling institution. Neither is an internet cafe.
But a web shop can be used for gambling.
Yes,
but you were saying that gambling in cyberspace should not be considered illegal.
But here's the point. If you're going to classify, in the purest sense, if you're going to classify web shops, internet cafes as gambling institution, then BTC and Cable Bahamas have to be classified as the same, because they're providing the exact same service the web shop is providing in your house.
And you can go to Cable Bahamas, or you can go to a BTC outlet and use...
No, here's my point. When I go to the web shop, I pay them for access to the computer, access to the internet, right? To spin, see porn, order a movie, Netflix, talk to a girlfriend, wife, anything. When I go to BTC, I order the same thing, except I pay them on a monthly basis. The web shop or internet cafe, I'm just paying them for an hour. But so in essence, if you say the web shop is a casino, then you need to declare the exact same service Cable Bahamas and BTC is offering me at home. You need to declare BTC and Cable Bahamas casinos. Is now officially using a definite. You can't see again. Remember, I just talked about using what is called shifting standards. You can't. You say this is the access portal, and if they were to talk to an engineer at BTC or talk to an engineer at Cable Bahamas, they'll tell you the exact same service that you offer to the internet service provider is the exact same service you get at home.
Okay, let's take another break here. Godfrey Innes has a good question for you. We take this break, and we'll come right back.
In a world of globalization, economic uncertainty, terrorism, culture clash, family disintegration, corporate distrust, youth disillusionment, political confusion, and religious corruption, the wisdom to navigate successfully through life is necessary. Welcome to Living Effectively. Living Effectively, a program designed to provide wisdom, insight, information, and inspiration to effectively face the challenges of the 21st century world. And now, here's your host, Dr. Miles Monroe.
Tuned in on Sundays at 3:30 p.m. for Living Effectively and for the rebroadcast on Thursdays at 10:30 p.m. on JCN TV 14 Jones Communication.
Hello, Bahamas. My name is Craig Flowers. Today I'd like to talk to you about something that has always been very near and dear to me, and that is our environment. I came from a very humble two-bedroom wooden house, Kwaku Street, with an outdoor toilet. Today, I'm CEO of FML Group of Companies. With all my lifetime journey, I would have brought with me a tremendous amount of respect for our environment. So let us all chip in. Remember, when we invest into the environment, everybody wins. Thank you.
Here we are on Jones and Company, and we are caught up in this digital age, and we are talking about embracing knowledge-based economy on this show today. Godfrey Innes.
Mr. Johnson, has the digital age, along with information technology, changed the meaning of gaming? What is gaming? Gaming doesn't have to be gambling, does it?
No, it doesn't. That's
Right?
it, but that's the point.
That's the problem.
You're absolutely correct. Gaming now, this is why you have gaming industry that encompasses gambling. See, and here it is, believe it or not, there are two different things. One is smaller than the other. And the problem is we're calling gaming gambling. When Atlantis didn't say they want digital gambling, Atlantis says we want a new gaming law. Because they know what it is, and they brought in the consultants, in fact, according to the minister.
To make it simpler, gaming is no longer just
the slot machines, the
right.
tables, and other things. No, it's no longer that. Gaming could be anything. Actually, gaming now actually is virtualization, where individuals create avatars, which is a copy of you or whatever you want to look like in cyberspace. And you can actually have battles, and where you actually have battle to the death. You have car racing. You have all of those now.
Yeah, and so you don't need a big auditorium kind of building, a big room to get involved in gaming. You are involved in gaming on this little
this is the gaming,
cell phone.
And this is what I was fighting for during the whole referendum. To simply saying, Flowers and others have access to 5 billion people around the world. Gentech, the government just admitted that Gentech has been advising them for over 1 year on this referendum, this proposal for gaming. And the question is, they've been advising them a year, and we only had the whole argument for referendum in the last 6 months. But this is a new platform. And I'm somewhat suspicious that we're even going for what is called a form of proxy gaming that actually, that they are beginning to talk and have conversation about. And let me explain what proxy gaming is. Proxy gaming is basically where, let's say you have an internet cafe or an Atlantis. You will give access to a server, but what happens is you have to go through their wireless network. And as soon as you get out of the range of their wireless network, you no longer have access to the server. So you can't go home and have access to it. You must use it on their private network. That is called proxy gaming. In my understanding, and you asked me about why I took my position, I spoke to all of the ministers who's directly involved with gaming and those who's going to vote on it. Not one. And I have it on tape. I have a friend of mine that went and talked to them on video. Not a single one of them could explain to you what gaming was. Not even Mr. Andre Rawlings, who was in charge of gaming. They couldn't explain to you what digital gaming was. They couldn't explain what a digital platform was. They couldn't explain anything. They basically were saying to what somebody told us. And I have never been in a game shop. I've never been in a web shop. And I'm saying, like, okay, then how could you actually regulate, bring to application something you have no concept of?
Yeah.
And that's scary. But let me go back to what is happening. In my mind, and this is my opinion, the proxy gaming that they're now giving Atlantis was what was intended for the web shops. And basically what it would have done, it would have locked behemoths into this lower level TED gaming platform. And I put to you, the only reason that they're now giving that to Atlantis is because once we had agreed to a tiered gaming, they could have then give Atlantis an open platform. Now, in the absence of being able to do that, the reason they must now give Atlantis the tiered platform is, and others, and not just Atlantis, but all the casinos in the Bahamas, is because the only other alternative after that is an open platform, which would give all behemoths. Now, let me interject this. Under WTO and other trade agreements that we sign, it will become illegal for any form of discrimination for ownership of gaming in the Bahamas or anywhere in the world. We are fighting to ascend to WTO. So the question one must ask yourself, if in 2014 that the government said they will be seeking membership for which they would have to do away with gaming, the only thing that prohibits gaming in the Bahamas against behemoth is not the Constitution. The Constitution makes allocation for a law to be created. It's the Lottery and Gaming Act. And the only thing you have to modify is the Lottery and Gaming Act. So if you only have to change the Lottery and Gaming Act, you have to change it for Atlantis, you have to change it for the web shop. Why then will you change something that discriminates against me to another discrimination?
Mr. C. Allen Johnson, you have religion or religiosity in the way Godfrey Aeneas, where religion,
Yes.
and people's concepts of what they read in the Bible come to bear on all that you are saying in terms of digitalization and digital regulation and e-commerce. People are basing their opinions, their views on the Bible. Now, how do you get around that in the Bahamas?
Well, in the Bible, I tell you, there's a tremendous amount of technology embedded right throughout the Bible. In fact, if you begin to understand that nothing exists in the absence of God, and so anything that we have, especially technology, must come from God. And that's the absolute. And so you would have to claim that this came from something else. And so, in fact, everything I use technology is actually man's aggressive pursuit of the mind of God in the way we do computations. And because a computer can do billions of computations, if God has an unlimited capability of computations, computers is in pursuit of that.
Technology is what?
Huh?
Man's
pursuit of the power of God.
Man's pursuit of the power of God.
Yes. We can do things in the last 15 years that they couldn't do if you use the theory of 6,000 years since creation, that they couldn't do in 6,000 years before. In the year 2001, enough information was produced in 1 year than if you add up every single day from the beginning of time, from the Garden of Eden in the year 2001 is where we meet what is called net zero.
Yeah. Anthropologists have been telling us a whole lot of things through technology that we didn't know.
Right. Let's use an example. Yeah. Years ago, someone had a heart attack. We just usually make funeral arrangements. Now we could replace heart, we could replace limbs, we could replace sight, we could replace sound. We could almost build man.
You can do all sorts of surgical procedures.
Right, through technology. And so to deny technology is basically to deny existence. You know, it's amazing that individuals will actually deny technology but pick up a calculator, the power, the same type of computing power that sent man to the moon, or even a toaster. You know.
How do you get the clerics, the religious clerics, to appreciate that what you are doing in cyberspace is inoffensive or not offensive to Christianity, and as one person say that you are dishonoring God by what you are doing in gaming in web shops. How do you disabuse clerics of that?
Because what happens is you can choose individual things and have the same argument throughout the digital world. You could say you're abusing yourself or abusing yourself when you watch pornography. In the same way the clerics took...
No, you are dishonoring God.
Dishonoring God watching pornography.
Yes.
But you're using a digital platform. You could say you're dishonoring God when you watch a particular movie that, like for instance, they had BET taken off, but you could access BET on your cell phone. And then so there's a lot of things. And so essentially, the problem is they begin to think as if the technology is separate apart from the world, when technology is the new world. It is, you know, and it's the same way. You remember before electricity, a lot of people used to probably run around, and the clerics used to run around saying that, you know, you're going to go to hell for using electricity, and we're going to do a lot of different things. But we have come to realize that it's a tool. Technology is like a knife. It can harm you if used improperly, but you don't stop using the knife. You find means and ways to utilize the knife for the betterment of society.
Mr. Johnson?
Let me just say this, Godfrey. In fact, the church, if they embrace technology, could actually have a better platform. Instead of fighting technology, embrace technology to take your message onto the same platform that you're saying the people are. If they're in cyberspace, most reverends could never reach 170,000 people. One sermon in the Bahamas, properly posted and marketed on social media, in 8 minutes could reach 170,000 people. And so if you're going to teach morality, embrace technology and face gambling, face pornography, face all of those different things head on. And if the world is transforming themselves into the technological field for which they're now committing these things that you say is immoral, then go ye into the world, the new digital world, and spread the word.
Aren't we victimizing ourselves from the point of view that more and more, or a higher percentage of the population is going to be more and more digitized?
I think victimization is a kind word that you're using.
And the fact is that we're going to have these antiquated laws because we're not technologically driven, and the global environment for technology is advancing so quickly that we'll never be able to keep abreast.
And actually, you're correct. I don't, Mr. Leon Williams just sent me a piece of information. We exist in a digital world, so we exchange information on real time. Even while I was driving here, I was reading some information that he sent me, not even knowing I'm being here, I don't remember the country, but they have made it mandatory that no homes could be built in our country without fiber, meaning that they must be prepared for the whole new evolution. You understand, your building permit mandates fiber in the house, not a choice. In fact, the United Nations has declared broadband is a right. You know how we talk about rights of the children and everything? The United Nations has declared access to broadband is a right, not a privilege. It's a right. Okay? And so here...
Well, you see, in the Bahamas, you have to tell people what broadband is, you know.
Oh, broadband is a high-speed connection to the internet that you get from Cable Bahamas. In fact, you get broadband on your phone now with BTC. Mm-hmm. But in fact, in the Bahamas, broadband is the only type of connectivity that actually exists now. And I don't know anybody else that doesn't have broadband. If you do, please call me. I really need to talk to you because you are further back than our MPs. But, but what happens is that these are rights we have. And what you said, Godfrey, about victimization is actually abuse. We are encouraging abuse, child abuse to our children. We are separating our students from learning. I mean, I see the College of the Bahamas. I'm always hurt, and I used to do the Ecclesiastic 1:18 all the time. With much knowledge comes much grief.
It's quite a form of retardation you're talking about.
Yes, but it actually is orchestrated retardation, because what happens is it's like you have children with an eager desire to learn, and their parents saying, "You can't learn Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. Why you need Spanish? I made it without Spanish." When everybody said we're going to be only speaking Spanish in a shorter period of time. And so the problem is that what we have is a leadership problem in the Bahamas. What we have is an antiquated group of leaders that have no idea or no desire to actually embrace technology in a 21st century, digitally enriched Bahamas.
Having created this political conundrum with the referendum, how do you suggest that the government can move forward, that the people of the Bahamas can move forward to embrace the digital age that you're talking about and digitalization?
On May 1st, when they go back into Parliament, and if their intent is to introduce this bill to modify the Lottery and Gaming Act, the Lotteries and Gaming Act is what denies Bahamians access to gambling and ownership. Strike it down. Do not insult the intellect of the Bahamian people to go into Parliament and modify the Lottery and Gaming Act and exclude us. Do not attempt to bring a modified version that gives Atlantis certain right, that gives Bahamas certain rights, that denies Bahamians access to this global marketplace. Then form a committee. There is many of us in the Bahamas. A lot of them remain silent. I am just more of an activist, vocal type person, but there's many of them. I know 160 of them that I actually talk to on an ongoing basis. We have discussions. They'll allow us, sanction us, to bring forth a digital platform, not just for economic development, but for business, for advising the government, for efficiency, coming up with a complete digital platform. The government of the Bahamas spent 10 to 15 million for Singapore, but in essence, Singaporeans basically give you advice based on your requests. If you don't know what to ask for, and you say you want to do this, they would create what you need to do as opposed to forcing you to go into a further ahead. And so what we may have done was wasted $15 million. You cannot simply, you know, if you, Mr. Jones, if you have a website, can you imagine paying $15 million for your website?
See, Alan Johnson, isn't it true? There are some Bahamians who are just allergic to good sense, allergic to what you're talking about.
I think we call it parliament.
Baby?
We call it parliament.
You call that parliament?
Yes.
but aren't there a whole lot of people who have this aversion to what you are talking about?
Yes, there's a group that don't know, and that's what happens is they have an inkling, like you say, you know that you have a calling, you know you have a desire, and you just can't know what it is, and that's the new digital natives. But you have a group of individuals that refuse to let go, and they have become power hungry. It's more about power than it is of purpose.
You know, I think that we as Bahamians put too much stock in politicians.
Actually, you're absolutely correct.
I know I'm correct. You know, and politicians are people, ordinary people, who aspire to be in public life, but that doesn't give them any special expertise, right, in any particular area. But yet we look to them for leadership in every sphere of life.
And that is the problem.
And it goes back to what Jones has been saying on this program. We have a weak civil society. It is civil society who should be leading us and leading us forward. Not no political, no parliament. The civil society should dictate to the parliament where we should be going.
But the church is part of civil society.
The church, you know, but we look to the parliament to dictate to us, to tell us where we need to go. They don't know.
But see, what happens is we have never let go of our colonial mindset. Well, no, I'm saying, but what happens is when you indoctrinate, if you say something long enough in the Bahamas, they actually start believing it. And what happens is you have a system of a colonial system that is no longer existing. Even the colonials has quit that. You know what they've done? They're buying up the companies. They're buying the digital infrastructure. So they're conquering us in another way. Before they use another method. But the problem is we could counter it.
But see, Alan Johnson, Godfrey, is if you have clerics in the Bahamas who are leading civil society on something that they have
no knowledge of,
yeah, and little appreciation for, they are adding to the confusion in the society.
I would have to agree with you to some extent, yes. And no, to a very large extent. The reason is that you are preaching against something that you don't know. And it was something my parents always told me. Never argue against something you can't argue for, because that means that you have no understanding of what it is. You have an opinion. And so the problem is that until we begin to challenge them, and I think it's coming to the point now that we don't really have a choice, because we cannot simply go on the fact that you know, with all respect, you have a lot of the clerics that basically that has been called. And with all respect, there's a certain calling to bring people to the knowledge of God. But there's a difference between bringing somebody to the knowledge of God and the dictation of what God said.
Yeah, but you see, when you speak the way you are speaking, and you are encouraging the government of the Bahamas to put in place legislation that would embrace knowledge and would educate Bahamians on the new technology. You have some clerics who say that you're not Christian, you know. You are anti-Christian. And I would and one accused me after listening to me. He said he disappointed in me. Say I'm a church man. He knows me to go to church all my life. It's true, all my life. Grew up in church, went to church, go to church every Sunday. But he said that because I'm talking the way you are talking, that he disappointed in me.
Well, what you should do is invite him the next
time.
He's
a pastor, you know.
Yeah, the next time he goes to church.
And he's supposed to have sense.
Right. The next time he goes to church, tell him, look.
And leading people?
Yes, and that's the problem. Actually, it's called, some people, our leadership in our country actually dumb people down. And when next time he brings it up, tell him when he looks at the clock, it's a digital clock.
No, but he wouldn't tell me that. He told somebody that.
Okay, you know, because, and that's the problem, is that we're not having intellectual discourse within our country. And so what we need to do is we need to change the dynamics of our conversation and not allow it to be dictated. And simply put, if the pastors believe what they believe, invite people like me that are technologists, and let's take the Bible and let's have the conversation. Let's have the conversation. From a digital aspect, I'll bring my digital Bible and see if it says anything different than your written Bible.
But they would allow digital Bibles in church.
As technology?
Yes, that's technology.
But so you recognize that technology is a tool.
They allow you to do in cyberspace. Church leaders will allow you to do certain things in cyberspace. But gaming,
right, but let's just the point.
Is something
do you know,
they are not prepared to countenance.
Do you know I've written software for gaming and programs, but my children don't game. I've written software and platforms for pornography. None of my children, I think, have ever watched pornography. What you do is you teach moral values within those individuals. It doesn't matter whether you put a pawn shop on the corner, a liquor store on the corner, or gaming on the corner. If you teach moral values within the person, their conscience, the science of knowing, conscience, the science of knowing will prick them and cause them to move away. So teach morality within the people, embed it within the people, and pawn shops, pornography places, web shops, and anything else that's immoral will die a natural death.
Let me give you an example. We're in the business of tourism, right?
Yes.
That's our business. I go to the airport, and your first experience is a lasting experience. Your first experience could determine what kind of vacation you have. And if you come into an airport and you got to wait, in some cases, it takes you longer to get your bags and get your go through customs than it takes for you to fly here.
But let me just show you an example just quickly,
right?
in a few seconds.
You see what I'm saying?
Right. But let me just show you, Jeffrey.
And so you come to this country, and you got to wait all this time to get your bags and to go through customs. Immediately,
you're locked.
You got a bad experience.
Right. But here's,
right? Why aren't we technologically?
But we are. We don't use it.
To avoid that delay.
Let's use an example. Quickly, how you do this. A guy comes in with an e-passport. It has his picture, has his whole biometrics. We have an e-passport reader. Yeah. When he walks up there, he literally don't even have to take his passport out of his pocket, you know. We can read it with him standing there, and his picture, everything shows up. We need to, oh, that's you. Continue on. We have every single thing we need about him. We even have the ability to market to him after he leaves, you know. We could call him back and say, Mr. Jones, we would like you to fill out a survey of your trip. We would like for you to recommend this and forward his emails to a few friends. I made this presentation to the government in 2006. But we have an e-passport reader. You read the passport. Just pass through. It should not take more than 60 seconds per person. You don't. That's my point. The e-passport, when you walk through, you don't have to take, when he says, how you doing? You just walk through. As soon as you reach within this zone, it reads the e-passport. The person say 10 people traveling, they rest the 10 passport on the picture, bang, 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 bang. It all shows up, he looks around the room, okay, that's you, that's you, that's you.
But everybody comes through, you got to go through an immigration officer, and he got to stop it.
Ah, boy.
But we also know when they're leaving, they have a reader, when the person is reading. When they leave the country, we can even tell if and when they leave.
Thank you so very much, C. Alan Johnson, for being here today.
Thank you so much for both of you for having me.
You have your work cut out in terms of teaching people this emerging technology. And hopefully you can get the politicians on board so that they can know how to legislate.
Well, I'm hoping to utilize JCN in the form of a television program to begin the education process.
Very good. Thank you for being here today. I appreciate it very much. Thank you, Godfrey.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching and listening to our program today. I'm sure you found it illuminating. Good evening, everyone.
asked Christie one question about BTC, and he starts one piece of stumbling around the place talking about the lawyer and the attorney general, the fellow come down and do the thing. We can go and have a referendum on gambling, and you all bunch of hypocrites who threaten FNMs can go talk about how Jesus said this and that. Do not tell us about the concerns of prisoners. We do not care. The condition of Foxhole Prison is part of the punishment for being a criminal.